that you have joined us again today. We have a treat for you. We have Jen Buck, who is a premier speaker. She has been in the industry for 25 plus years and has really paved the way for herself in the speaking world through a message that's really important to her. So, what I'd love to dive into, Jen, today is a little bit about your backstory. What got you, what clicked with you and said, if I use my voice, I'm going to be able to not only reach my financial goals, my career goals, but also really impact people with the message that I want to bring them.
Oh, well, first, thank you for having me, Antoniette. I am so happy to be here. And my story started really early, and I kind of feel like I was one of the lucky ones that was very loud growing up, was very exuberant and all those things. And yet I'll never forget a high school, college counselor, if you will, say that she didn't recommend that I go to college. And that, of course, was devastating. And I did go to college. And while I was in school, though, I was so sort of unmoored. I didn't have a true north. I didn't know what I was going to do. And I was spending way too much time doing things I shouldn't be doing, going out, using a fake ID and all these crazy things. And I remember my mom came to me and said she had purchased tickets to a women's conference. And it was the first of its kind. And I didn't know anything about anything like this. I'd never heard of it before. I had, again, no true north, didn't know where I was going. And so she brought me to this women's conference, and I didn't want to be there. I thought I was too young. It was in LA. I was from a suburb. I felt so awkward and out of place. And I remember that Joan Rivers was the keynote speaker.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't I didn't know what to think. I didn't know who Joan Rivers was. I actually said to my mom, who's the old broad? And my mom looked at me with complete shock and disgust and said, "That's Joan Rivers." And I remember realizing she was important, but I was 18. I didn't care about these things. And before I knew it, I was crying
Mm.
and I was, shaking and clapping and just going on this ride with her. And when she was done, I remember it was the first real standing ovation I'd ever given.
Mm.
And I was so moved by this woman. And by the end of that conference, at the end of the day, I told my mom, that's what I'm going to do. And of course, she said, those people aren't real. That's not a real job and all of that. But within 6 months, I was given an opportunity to work for a startup as a trainer, training people on how to use the latest equipment for sales and transactions, credit card box machines, if you
Mm.
remember those, right? And so I started early. While I was going to school, I was working for this startup, ended up being there 10 years. So just got all the certifications you can imagine. I was able to use my voice. There were times when I didn't. And the people that hired me would say, "What are you doing? You need to speak up. You need to use your voice." So I think it started pretty young for me, lots of exuberance and then quickly knowing that's it. That's what I'm here on this planet to do.
Had you not gone to that conference and seen Joan Rivers, what difference would that have made for you? And I guess what I'm really getting at is we really don't realize the impact we can make on one person in an audience that really changes the trajectory of their whole lives
Yeah.
because they get it. They see something that they hadn't seen before. Surely somewhere along the line you may have picked it up, right? But to get that at 18
Yeah.
and finally find your North Star and go for it. Talk to me a little bit about that and what that does to you when you're out there speaking to a crowd of faces, right? And you're thinking of that one face, that Jen Buck that's out there who isn't
Yeah.
even sure she wants to be there, and all of a sudden something clicks for her.
Yeah. I remember when I was in college, I had a presentation to give in a speech class, and it was my freshman year, and it was during that 6-month window. And I remember crying to my dad because I had this speech the next morning, but I'd just been broken up with by my first love, if you will, and saying to him, "I don't know how I'm going to get through it." And it was my dad who said to me, "Jen, just toss everything you've created. They've given you no expectation on what it has to be. It just has to be a 15-minute speech. Speak from the heart. That's where you're always at your best. And so it was that speech that I remember made the male professor hold me back at the end of the class and tell me that it had brought him to tears, because it was the first time, because I'd hated speeches my whole life too, right? Up until that point. And it was the first time that I realized I moved someone. So when I'm getting on stage now, I do take time very quietly to get very focused. I understand without question that my exuberance or my knowledge or my enthusiasm, whatever it is the gift that I've been given to carry through this life. And I know it's not me. I know that there are times when I'm speaking and someone will come up later and say, "What were those 3 things that you said?" And I don't know. I don't know what it was, because I have to let go in that moment and be the vehicle, you know? And so I do take that time to really get centered on who the message is for, because what I practice or what I put together and choreograph isn't always what comes out only, it's often bigger than that. And so I know that what I've been given, this talent for me to carry through life, is very much about making sure it hits the right person. And it's being open enough to allow that,
Yes.
whatever it is in the moment that comes through, I have to be willing to let go of control for a bit and go there, and allow those words to come out. And it never fails that people come up after and say, "I just have to share with you what I'm going through. And when you said this," and again, sometimes it was planned, sometimes it was just not,
Mhm.
and you have to be open to that. We are the vehicles. We are the
Yeah.
messengers, I often say.
You alluded to something that I want to emphasize because it's so true. We're always, as speakers, a lot of times, especially newer speakers, we're so nervous about what we're going to say and how we're going to say it. If we're going to say it in order, if we're going to miss one of our bullet points, right? And really, I love that you just kind of threw all of that out the window, because people don't remember what you say. They remember how you made them feel, what kind of emotions you brought up in them, what kind of light bulbs went off, and that's what they'll remember.
Yeah,
They may not be able to recite one line that you said. I don't know, maybe something catchy they're able to say, but they really can't say what it was, but they know how you made them feel, and that's what creates that fan base, and that's what creates, frankly, the transformation in
that's
your
it.
audience.
Yeah. And I'm still a big proponent of being very prepared and having a plan and having words that I just nail over and over and over again. And I am absolutely someone that believes in the choreography of a keynote. But there are times that we have to let go, that we
Yeah.
have to allow whatever message is meant to be heard and seen in the moment to come out and create a little bit of space for that. Right. So, yeah.
Absolutely. There's definitely a balance in there. You don't want to go and talk about yourself and, just go on these bunny trails all over with your story. There has to be, who are you there for, and what transformation you're going to bring them, right? That's top of mind. A
Yeah.
structure. I'm a belief in PowerPoints to help people follow what you're saying, but not for something for them to read, or not even really to take pictures of. Sometimes that's great if there's uh, a graph that is illustrative of something that you're bringing across, but really it should support Jen Buck and what you're saying versus the PowerPoints supporting you, right? It really should help them follow what you're saying versus you following what the PowerPoint is saying. So thank you for bringing in that fine line. Yeah, go in organized, because then it's going to be more about them and not about you. But also make sure it stays about them.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I'm also one of those people bringing up PowerPoint that I don't want bullets on my PowerPoints. I don't want it. No one wants it. And so when I'm up there, I am the story. I am the presentation. I am the person that's going to take them on the journey. And so I tend to, for new speakers, because new speakers tend to put lots of bullet points because they
Mhm.
know that if they get off track, they can look or wherever the, monitor might be, and they can get back on track. I don't do that. What I do is one big word or one image. That's how my PowerPoints look, because people in the audience are not wanting to read either. They're not
Yes.
wanting to. And that's a big difference between new speakers and people who've been in the industry for a bit, and trainers and speakers, right? I mean, these are two different worlds. And if you've been a trainer for a long time, you're very comfortable with PowerPoint. But in my opinion, I don't think it really should be anything but an accentuation of maybe a word that you say and bam, it hits, right? And
Yes.
the better you get at this, I think the more you're able to trust what you have in your deck.
Well, I love that, because there's science behind the fact that once people start reading, they stop listening. They
That's
can't
right.
do both. So you are so spot on with that. Go ahead, since you're on this track, I would love for you to go a little bit deeper into other mistakes that aspiring speakers make, because a lot of times they're experts in their field and now they're stepping out and getting that curated knowledge onto the stages, right? But they're not
Yes.
necessarily trained in how to speak. And I think there's a fine
Yeah.
line there, being overtrained.
There is. And the industry right now is actually moving toward thought leadership. They want people who are in the role, doing the job, putting out compelling
Yes.
information on LinkedIn or wherever it is on their blog. And those are the people that they're putting out on stages now as keynote speakers or breakout speakers. And so it's a very different world right now. So I've been a professional keynote speaker for 25 years. This is my job. And yet, I'm seeing so many more thought leaders that are on stage who are working and leading organizations. And so I actually work with a lot of executives who are going through that transition because they're great at what they do. Their mind is extraordinary, but they don't necessarily know how to transition into being a compelling speaker, making an impact, leaving some resonance with people so that they want to create change, right? And so I know that that transition is very difficult for a lot of people. It's not always synonymous to be a great thinker and a great speaker, right?
Mhm.
And so there are some mistakes that people make, and PowerPoint is one of them, right? Having too much to click and too much on the screen, and it really is it's a comfort blanket, if you will,
Mhm.
right? But I think also that a lot of new speakers don't realize that they need to hit the ground running the minute they get on stage. They need to jump into the action. Think about every movie that you watch. Every time you're watching a movie, it starts with the big action scene to suck you in. But yet, a
Mhm.
lot of newer speakers get on and start to say, "Thanks so much for having me. It's really great to be here. I've been doing that." And they give this backstory. No one
Yeah.
wants it. What they want is something that's going to bring them to attention and make them go, wow, right?
Yes.
Because what we know about impact is that it's about making them feel, making them laugh, and doing something unexpected. And that has to be what you do the minute you step on stage. It has to be something that gets them to pull away from their phone, pull away from the conversation they're having, and go, holy cow. And so that's an important piece of this that a lot of speakers haven't necessarily learned until they've been in the industry for a bit. There's a great old law of speaking that says people remember first what they heard last and most what they heard first.
Hmm.
So I don't care if it's first or most, doesn't matter to me. Your two PowerPoints, this law is telling you, is in your opening and your closing. And both of them have to make me sit up straight and go, holy cow, right? Wow. Those are your two major PowerPoints. And a keynote goes like this. So you can't get me up and then stay down for the whole keynote and then bring me up at the end. You got to keep me coming back for more. And each high point is pulling my attention in. So those are the things you kind of learn as you go. And that's really about the practical or the stage, right? Creating the actual keynote. But I think a lot of speakers are more focused on their career than maybe mentoring and teaching other speakers. So there are a lot of question marks in this industry for people who want to get in. And I work with speakers all the time, trying to help them demystify this industry. We all win And when we hoard information, only one wins. And that's not good enough if we're going to stand on stage as a leader. And so I work with people to demystify these things. I notice that a lot of websites are coach oriented. As a reminder for mistakes that speakers make, they think that a speakers bureau or an event planner is going to hire a coach for a keynote. They will not ever, never. But I will tell you what will happen with clients. They will hire a speaker for a coach.
Hmm.
So your website needs to be speaker, 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 not coach, not trainer, not podcast host, speaker, 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 speaker. And that's one of the big shifts in mindset that a lot of people need to make, because they're thinking, but my moneymaker, I'm shaking my moneymaker as a coach because that's where I make money. Fine. Have a different site for your speaking, and have a site for your coaching. You have to be all about the speaking if you're going to get hired by these event professionals for big dollars. It's just a must, right? So
Yes.
there are a lot of things. I just threw two at you that people could improve. I also think that having all your speaker assets perfect is necessary. I think that people need to utilize the right platforms to find events. A lot of people are hanging out on Facebook and they're with their family and high school friends and neighbors, or they're hanging out on Instagram thinking that that's where people buy. They don't buy speaking there. They need to be hanging out on LinkedIn. That's where event professionals play. So there are things that we need to tweak, and that's part of the demystification that I do with aspiring speakers, is help them to get some of these big question marks filled in, right? Because when I share it, they win. When you win, I win. Like it's just the way this has to work, and there's plenty for all of us.
Okay, you said you gave 2, but I wrote down 7, so there was a lot
Oh
more
my
than
gosh.
that's great. And I would like to touch on a few things because I definitely resonate with so much of what you said. The cadence. So one of my speakers is a former pro athlete,
Mhm.
and he is always up here, always all the way through, right? And you're energized, but he never gives you that dip. And so that's
The
been one of the
break.
biggest thing that we've been working on. So
Yes,
yes, bring them high, but you've got to dip down low. They need a breather, then
that's
bring
right.
them back up. So
That's
it's
right.
not all about the high, and it's not all about the pain either, and the struggle,
That's right.
and the woes, right?
Mhm.
They need a break from the lows, they need a break from the highs, and that it is a bit of a symphony, it is a bit of an art, and you
Yes,
find that in your voice as you go, but deliberately plan it out, and it becomes natural, and you kind of find that natural cadence. I also love that you said, right when you get on the stage, hit the ground running, because that is something nobody cares about your bio, right? You can
no,
weave that in little ways. One of my speakers worked side by side with Zig Ziglar for decades. And he could open with that. Hey, I was Zig Ziglar's right hand trainer. He did the motivation, I did the tactical,
yep,
but he doesn't. He opens up with what's relevant to the audience, and then you drop those through because people are like, "Well, okay, you're
that's it.
wow, Jen Buck, you're amazing, but who are you? Like,
That's right,
why am I listening to you?" Right? And you just kind of
right.
drop those in all the way through. Nobody needs your bio, and that's something actually I weave into this show. We weave in your bio as we go. I'm not doing this long introduction of spending the first 3 minutes telling all of your background, right? Because you're exactly right. People aren't here for that. They're here for the nitty gritty. So
Yeah,
you brought out these beautiful pieces of information.
thanks.
Um, I love that you said when we hoard information, no one wins.
That's right.
So often I will hear a speaker say, "Oh, but I don't want to give away my IP. People can." I just met with somebody yesterday who said I was in. Hold on, we'll cut this part out. We'll cut that part out.
Yeah, no
I'm in
problem.
the country and my dog is going after one of the chickens. Did you
And
hear
just so you
that?
know, I didn't hear anything, but
Oh,
there you have it.
I do have a good camera microphone. Anyway, okay, so I'll pick up from there. Um, so when I just met with somebody a couple of days ago who was really upset because somebody had stolen her IP. and she quit the NSA because somebody had stolen her IP. And I really, really like her, and she's beautiful. And people can do that, and they can do a lot of damage. But really, in the end, nobody's going to deliver it like she does. And the
That's right.
audience isn't going to accept it. It's not authentic to them, it's authentic to her. So when we give away our information from a place of fear, we often are hurting ourselves more than we're hurting the audience. You really can't outgive.
Yeah,
There is nobody who's going to deliver Jen Buck's message the way Jen Buck does, right? There's
that's right.
nobody who's going to deliver Antoniette Rose's message the way you could have my entire script, and you're not going to reach the same people. So when you give in an abundant way, that's when you really, it's just like, wow, if Jen's giving this away and this is just a 45-minute talk, how much more is she going to give when I link arms with her and work with
Yes.
her on a deeper level?
Yeah.
So love that you brought that up.
Yay.
So tell me a little bit about when you, do, do you, do you recommend that aspiring speakers do, this is another one, just like I don't know how to say it, because there's free when it comes to money, and then there's free when it comes to you really getting nothing, right? So to do free events, what are your thoughts on free events?
Yeah. So I think there has been for years this conversation around fee parity and making sure that you get paid for every event. And I am constantly reminding speakers that they're not going, and I mean aspiring speakers, that they're not going to be able to play in the big leagues if, sorry, now that was mine. I'm going to go ahead and
Super.
start this again.
We got
That
it. I
was
got a
my
great
delivery.
post-production team.
Yeah. Good, good, good. So I'm constantly reminding speakers that free can be actually very valuable. And we have had conversations for years around fee parity and consistency and all of that. But what aspiring speakers don't realize is that your speaker reel, your testimonial reel, your client, information, those types of things are gold and will get you on bigger stages. And so you may not be getting a lot of offers for big dollar keynotes right now, but you may be getting offers for something across town that you can go and do this keynote, spend an hour and a half of your time, and now you have footage of both video and photographs. Now you've got people that are willing to talk on video about how phenomenal you were. You've got a client, you've got written testimony, you've got all this stuff that is going to get you that much closer to those paid events. And I think that people sometimes let their ego get in the way. And I remember during COVID and the lockdown that all of a sudden I had all of these different events that were just literally disappearing before my eyes.
Yes.
And at that point, I was having 2 years worth of events because at that time we were booking very far in advance. It's very different now, but it was depressing to watch this happening. And then I'm seeing all my competitors, if you will, all my colleagues starting to put out these different posts about their Zoom meetings and their Zoom trainings and all of that. And trust me, I was like anybody else at the time. I knew what Zoom was, but I wasn't adept at it on any level. And I called a client and I said, I'm going to assume that we're going to cancel this, upcoming event that's coming up. And this was actually a corporate training client. And the more I talked to this woman, she told me that she's being bombarded with speakers who are trying to now get in with their Zoom trainings. And she said, what they don't get is that we're hurting too. We don't have the money to invest in training right now. We don't have this. And she said, my inbox is flooded. And at that moment, the light bulb went off. And I said to her, knowing that I just had 2 years of events that had blown up in front of my face, knowing that I still had bills to pay, I still had things to take care of. I said to this client who I'd worked with at that point for about 5 or 6 years, I said to her, until the end of the year or the end of we didn't know how long the shutdown was going to be happening. I'll give you as much free training as you want. You don't have to pay me. I will work with you once a week. We'll get your leaders in, we'll get your employees in, whatever it takes. We will
Wow.
do this as much as you want. And when that light bulb went off and I hung up the phone, I literally called every corporate client I had and said the same thing. I'm telling you that between March 12th and the end of that year, I made $0, but I've never worked so much in my life. What do you think happened the minute the world opened?
You were
The
being
loyalty
referred.
level,
Yeah.
the commitment to me, the words of affirmation that I've received from all of them was off the hook. And I say this to you because free does pay. It just may not pay in dollars in the moment, but it pays, and it pays on many levels.
Yes. So true. And most of your next engagements come from your last engagements,
That's right.
right?
Best
So
place
when
to
you're
sell.
there speaking, somebody's in that audience saying, "Wow, I need Jen to come and speak to our corporation or come speak to my
Yep,
ladies group," whatever it might be.
that's right.
So I turned a dud of an event. I thought I was going to speak in front of 8,500 people. It turned out to be 10, three of
Oh,
whom were my own speakers.
oh my gosh.
And I turned that into $33,000.
That's
So
amazing.
there are, you're just so spot on. There are so many more ways to monetize a speaking engagement outside of the host from the check or the hosting organization, right? That you're
That's
training
right.
for. What are
That's
some
right.
of the other ways that you monetize speaking outside of maybe that host direct from the organizer?
So I have books that I've written. It's something that in this industry, it is important. Nobody cares if they are written as a collaboration. No one cares really if it's a bestseller or not. I mean, those things are all great, but what they do care about is that you're staying in the game and continuing to put out information. The great thing about that, of course, is that we've got the ability to self publish. No one cares if it's not a New York Times bestseller.
Yes.
Again, they care that you're keeping your voice out there, you're staying relevant, and you're talking about things that fit within your niche. And so I will at times sell books at events if that's what they're looking for me to do, right? It's for me, it's a lot of work to sell at an event. And so for me to be doing the transaction can be a bit cumbersome, but if the
Yeah.
event says, "Oh, we've got people. They'll take care of it. You just stand there, talk to them and sign the books." I'm all for it, right? But that's one way. I've also actually had when during COVID, I had an event that was done and there were 10,000 people supposedly on this event around the world, and I was given the list of people who'd opted in for a prize that they were doing. So I may not have been paid for that, but I certainly was able to get people's names who had opted in, and those then became part of my information, right?
Mm.
It
Mm.
became part of what I can now market with. So, not traditional, but certainly a way. I was also given a list one time by an event that I did in Chicago that they gave me thousands of people and their information. And so there's a different way to be paid than just in dollars. Trust me, I want the dollars. I do want that. But sometimes it is by having an add on. I also often put, or it might be information. I also will add in because the speaking industry has changed and it's more competitive with the rise of things like Clubhouse, where people are talking on a social media platform. A lot of people are sort of wetting their whistle for becoming a speaker, right? It's not on any level the same to talk on a social media platform as speaking on stage, but it gets them realizing how powerful their voice is, their thoughts, their vision, right? And so what I've noticed is that there are a lot of people who are trying to get their voice out there, and they're using these different platforms to build their expertise, to build their thought leadership. And what's happening now, I think, is that a lot of people are taking that information and monetizing it into podcasts, monetizing it into coursework. I've worked with a lot of people who've decided to take their ideas and their thoughts, put them behind images. They have recordings, and now they're monetizing it in this course, right? That might be $99. I've also seen that with the industry changing as it has, that we're starting to see that people want not just sort of the giveaway, a course at the end of the keynote, but they're wanting some type of Zoom meeting or something afterwards. So while I don't do coursework, I have lots of courses that are out there, but I don't often do that. What I do is actually the live versions. And that for me has been great. I call them fireside chats. I offer them 30 days out. Anybody who wants to join the Zoom, we can come in and talk about what's working since they applied what I taught, what's not working. So I think there are layers and levels of how we can monetize. I sometimes give out free books, just to whoever, bring 10 books and they can raffle them off. I mean, there's always a way to get my information into their hands or to get me in front of them. And so whether it's monetizing an audio over images and making a course, or being with me live, buying books, I mean, I'm open to anything and everything.
I love innovation. And you're right. People want the information, and we all go to different places to get that information, right? So why not be there? Be where your people hang out like grapes,
Yeah.
right? Gather like grapes. So tell me a little bit about outside of your organization. How did you start getting those very first speaking engagements then, as opposed to how you're doing it now?
Oh, what a good question. So in the beginning, when I was working for that startup and I was doing the leadership development training and responsible for training, thousands and thousands of people twice a day, I heard in the newspaper, that's how long ago that was,
What is
that
that?
I know those ancient things. So there was a listing in the Sunday paper that there was a seminar company looking for trainers. And I went to this hotel for an audition, and they told me right out of the gate, because I was 28 years old, we don't hire speakers under 40. And at the time, I had all these certifications, right? I had 8 professional certifications. It was over 140 different courses I could train. But I walked away, then got outside and thought, no, I'm not leaving. And I went back there, and the woman said to me, in line, like I mentioned, and I was just resolute. And I ended up getting the audition because I showed her my certifications. I showed her 10 years of experience, and I got the job on the women's conference.
Mm.
So it was full circle for me all these years later. I think a lot of speakers forget, or aspiring speakers, that it's really good training ground to work for a seminar company.
Mm.
And that's where I got it. I was on that women's conference for 7 years, traveling to every state in the union and, seeing thousands of people at the time a day in those audiences. I got my chops in the beginning from a seminar company. So whether it's national seminars or Paget Thompson or I can't even think of the others right now off the top of my head, they're great training grounds to get your feet wet, but also to start perfecting what you do. Now, what I do is very different, right? I've built extraordinary relationships with about 26 different speakers bureaus out there. So I work with speakers bureaus all the time. I've also hired an assistant who is combing the internet constantly for call for speakers. And so I'm constantly looking, but there are also ways that if you're an aspiring speaker, that you can find collections of events looking for speakers. Some are no pay, some are full fee. And you might find that by doing a Google search for call for speakers. If you don't have your Google alerts on for call for speakers, you get 5 of them. And then getting very specific in your niche, you need to. So call for female speakers, call for speakers, women's conference, call for speakers 2025, whatever it is. So I will get every day my 5 emails. So sometimes there's gold in there, and I can do a very high paying event. A lot of times it's for a freebie, and I don't always do those unless it's in my backyard. And yes, I still do freebies. I just did one at an elementary school about 2 weeks ago. But I am constantly searching. You can also search call for speakers on your social platforms, all of them. You can use tools like eSpeakers. Everybody should have an eSpeakers profile up without question. eSpeakers also has in their hub, they've got events that you can go through. There's also Speaker Hub, which everybody should have a And let me say this differently. Every aspiring speaker should have a speaker hub profile up. They've got events in there. If you're paying, I think it's $250 for a year. And if you're paying for that, you are given access to all of their events. You've got Speaker Tunity, a very low price. I want to say it's somewhere in the 40 range a month, which I know
Jackie
sounds
Lappin.
scary.
I'm
What's
I'm
that?
actually Jackie Lappin. I'm
Yes,
interviewing her next week. Yep.
yes, yes, yes. They've got so many opportunities broken down by type of speaker that you are. Brilliant. Charlie Jane speakers.
Mhm.
Charlie Jane not only gives you information to help you build your reel, help you build your speaker assets, how to market to these event professionals, but she's got an entire hub. So there are lots and lots of ways out there for you to research events. And if you're not doing that, I constantly tell people, if you're not searching for events for a minimum of an hour a day, you will not be finding the opportunities. You have to.
Yes. Okay. That you led so beautifully into my this is my final question before we talk a little bit about you and then our signature question. And just perfectly orchestrated, not even planned. What you just lined out either totally overwhelmed half of our listeners or totally inspired the other half of the listeners, right? So, some of us are just like, well, can I just get a bureau? Like, can I just
Yeah.
get an agent? Do I really have to do anything on my side? Yes, get a bureau. Yes, get an agent, even if that's the thing. And I am an agent, so I'm talking from the heart, from what's real. The more you do on your side, the more you're really going to make it. And you had that spirit, Jen, that to go as a young woman to go back into that line and have the audacity, right? But really, I call it tenacity to go back and say, hey, I actually have some value. What do you need to at least
Mhm.
hear me out? Right. And then n- not hang your hat on any one thing. But what I'm hearing is you are out there, you are making it happen for yourself alongside, I don't remember what you said, but 20 bureaus, whatever it is that you said that you work with. You're not hanging your hat on any one place to make it happen for you. Can you speak a little bit to the word tenacity when it comes to really making it in the speaking industry?
Yes, and thank you for your kind words. I I think that knowing you're a messenger, knowing you have a purpose, knowing that this is where you belong has to be honored. And you're going to have people say no. Just this morning, right before I started talking to you, I got a notification saying that I wasn't chosen as a keynote speaker. It happens, right? And this is a tough industry. Whether you are doing this on your own or working with an agent who is making sure that you get these speaking gigs, there is always going to be some element of failure, right? Or that you don't always win the gig. And I constantly have to remind people that it's a numbers game. And the more I'm putting myself out there, the more I'm saying yes, 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 is my perspective on everything. When I have someone call me and they give me 50% of, or they can only offer 50% of my fee, could you possibly do this for us? Yes.
Mhm.
These things come back. I know they do. I've seen it in my 25-year career. Yes, of course I want to help people, right? And does it sometimes mean I have to put my ego aside and say, oh, I should be getting more than this, of course. But my purpose on this planet is to help people. And when it comes to all of this, and I hope I didn't overwhelm you when I threw that stuff at you,
It's all
but
it's truth. It's real. Yeah.
yeah, the truth is that this business is not just fame, high fives, and audience applause. This business is marketing. And this business is perfecting your thought leadership. And this business is making sure that you are building relationships constantly. And it's hard, but it's the most rewarding and wonderful thing I have ever done, which is why I know without a shadow of a doubt that I am a messenger and I am here to make a difference in this world. And I will endure that hour a day, that 2 hours a day of searching, because I know that the payoff is being able to step into the power that I have to help other people. And so Yeah, it's mystifying. It's crazy. There are a lot of elements, but I think it's just about every day deciding that you're going to have the tenacity to continue to move through the nose, continue to push through the eyes googling because you're staring at a screen all day, but knowing that you're planting seeds. And that is the most important thing you can do every single day is plant seeds.
So has it been worth it?
100%. I wouldn't do anything else.
Where would your life be without speaking?
Well, I'll tell you, I really have found myself needing to stay in leadership. And as a speaker, I speak specifically on impact and how to make an impact with the people that you lead. And I have made it my commitment to stay in a leadership role. Granted, it's part-time. Yes, I'm somebody that is working from home, but I'm now the COO of a nonprofit organization. And it's important to me to give back to my community and to be an active voice within my community. And so I think if I wasn't speaking, I would be right exactly where I am still at this moment, which is working with people who are not getting the support and care that they need to make sure that they can live fulfilling, happy, and supported lives in the nonprofit sector. That's the only thing I could tell you is
Yeah.
that I love it so much. I think I would probably be here too, but I can't imagine not having speaker attached to who I am. It's so synonymous with me, you know?
Yes. Oh gosh, and it shows.
Oh, thanks.
Speaking of that, can you share? I know there's bunches of people in this audience, especially, who want to know, where do I find Jen Buck? How do they find you?
Yes. I'm everywhere. And the consistent handle is Jen Buck Speaks. And it's Jen with one N. So Jen Buck Speaks. That's my website, jenbuckspeaks.com, and every social platform. Even my email is jen@jenbuckspeaks. So I'm easily found everywhere. And if you can write it down once, you will find me on every platform.
So that's bucks, like the big bucks. Let's talk about that.
Actually, it's a single buck, like one single
Yep.
big buck.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like a single big buck, the big
Yes.
buck. What do you speak to with regard? I said had one more question, but actually you spurred something in me. So two last questions.
Cool.
Um, the earning potential for a speaker who's really willing to put the elbow grease out there. They're not going to give up after a couple of years, right? They're really going to put themselves in that lane. Do you, is there a ceiling on earning potential? Like, what does that look like?
So I can give you something to consider. When I started speaking 25 years ago, I made $2,500 a keynote and I was thrilled. When I look at the earnings of people like Mel Robbins, their keynotes are $100,000. When we start to add even more celebrity to it, like maybe a president or maybe an actor or a singer, those numbers go up, 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 up. And I know that a former president not too long ago just received $1 million for a 1-hour keynote.
Wow.
So the earning potential is extraordinary. And what I always say to everyone is that if you take gigs at $2,500 today, you will work nonstop. Now imagine this, $2,500 for an hour of your time. It's what I made 25 years ago, which tells me it should be higher. But if you offer $2,500, I promise you, everybody is going to be shocked and want to know how they can get their hands on you because that's so affordable. And if we can take our ego out of it and not think about the Mels and not think about the presidents and actors and whatnot, and we can just think about our own personal economy, and what $2,500 an hour could look like if you do 100 events a year, it's pretty extraordinary. Now, the other side of this is that I have a friend of mine who tried to go from 10,000 to 15,000 and it didn't work. Should she be making 15,000? Sure, absolutely. The problem is if they're not paying it, then you shouldn't be raising your fee to it, right? You can give it a try, but if it doesn't work and you're now 6 months or a year in and no one's taking your fee, that tells you you're not ready yet. So you can bring it back. I have another speaker who, very good friend, who is in retirement. and she will speak anywhere for $3,500. Let me tell you, she's the busiest retirement, speaker I've ever seen in my life. Always working. Why? $3,500 is music to the ears of those who are hiring. So you have to find your sweet spot, but can you make money? Ridiculous amounts of money.
It doesn't fall in your lap, though, which is what we talked about the whole way through. Thank you for sharing that and for being so open, because I think that a lot of speakers compare themselves to those who are already making $25,000, $35,000 a talk, and they haven't even made $5,000 a talk
Yeah.
yet, right? So
Yeah.
it is a stepping stone. I love that after 25 years, Jen, you are still willing to take free engagements because you
Of
see the
course.
bigger value in it. That
Yes.
really speaks to your professionalism and the
Thank you.
fact that you're not a diva, right?
No.
There's a please do not be a diva, right? I will not
Right.
even represent a diva because that can ruin a whole account for so many other speakers.
100. And I have to tell you that I have competitors, if you will, who are and won't show up to meetings. Their people won't fly, even business class only. This is not what we're here to do. And I cannot say enough how important it is for you to keep your feet on the ground, to remember why you're here is to help others, to keep your ego out of it, and to be easy to work with. No one wants someone who's difficult, right? And I cannot tell you how many times I've heard event professionals say that. Thank you for not being a nightmare, which is
Right. Yes,
really
you want to get
sad.
dropped
That's a
from an
sad state.
that's so true. It doesn't matter how amazing you are once you get on stage. If you don't treat the people right on your way onto the stage and on your way off of the stage, it's not going to be pretty for your career.
Yeah.
Okay, you have been incredible. There's been so much gold and gems all throughout. If you could leave my audience with one last bit of wisdom, and that is really a directive,
Mhm.
something tactical that they can do. As you know, this show is speak packed. I love that you're all about the impact as well. What is that one thing an emerging speaker, whether they've already gotten their voice out there and they're really wanting to get to the next level, or they're an expert in something and they realize they really want to get that expertise out there, what's that one thing they can start doing today that will move the dial for them?
I think everyone listening needs to start thinking about their socials. Get on LinkedIn and make it your favorite, even though you have thoughts about it. Make it your favorite. But I want you everywhere to start crafting your posts, crafting your videos, crafting your message around being a speaker. Regardless of what you're speaking on, you need to always say and write in your posts. Recently, when speaking at an event, recently, when helping a client with their whatever, everything needs to be about speaking. When an event professional is looking to see if you are the person they want to bring on, let me promise you the first place they go is to LinkedIn. And so you need to be showing that you are speaking all the time. You need to start making sure that Canva is your greatest tool. Get those speaker elements for the event, the event assets created, even if the event doesn't create them. You got to get good at this, use the pre-made templates. But I want you to be thinking about how with every speaking event you give, you are posting it. Every time you're putting a post up, it's about, as a speaker, I've learned when I was recently speaking to a client recently, I learned always and use those hashtags that people are going to be searching. It is not about you. Don't put your name as a hashtag. Don't waste it. LinkedIn wants 5 hashtags. That's optimum for their algorithm. Put in what people are searching. And if it's the title of your keynote, that's not necessarily the one you want. You want things like speaker, keynote speaker, event speaker. You want to be putting things down like speakers bureaus, speaker management, aspiring speaker. You want to put things down that other people will search. So when an event professional is looking for someone and they want an impact speaker, because that's what my whole thing is impact, I will put impact and speaker as 2 of my hashtags, right? Or impact speaker. So be more strategic. Also, one last thing, If your business is what you're leading with, the name of your business, know that event speakers are looking for your name, not the name of your business. So
Mm.
you want to make sure that you are really clear that as a speaker, you are an individual now. And you need to put it out there that you're speaking all the time. And do not take a break and walk away from social because you're tired of it. We need to see you all the time out there doing your thing. Get on video, get a blog going. All those things need to be seen all the time.
Ah, brilliant. Okay. So basically, step into the shoes of the person you want to become, right? Even if you're not there 100% yet, start declaring it, start
That's it.
saying it, start being searchable along those lines. And then when you do get those engagements, shout it from the rooftops, don't hide. Right? That's brilliant. What talk about a pact to impact. That's amazing. And you've been such a delight. Thank you for being with
Yay.
me today. This has been a lot of fun.
You are so welcome. Hopefully, we can get in touch after and talk about where we might be able to collaborate as well.
We'll love that. We'll love that. Definitely welcome that. Okay. And for our audience, thank you for joining us today and be sure to come back. Ciao, ciao for now.